Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for taking time to come and participate in this press conference on the SAFE Act. I want you to know the reason why we're doing this. We're trying to establish the highest standards of care for young people who identify as transgender. Some people try to say things differently. Sometimes some of you have reported that we're denying health care to transgender individuals. That is 100% false. I understand that might be your perception, but it is false. It's 100% false. We're making sure that transgender young people had the highest quality and standards of care that they're not taken advantage of in this process for profit and for propaganda. Those are the things that we're trying to avoid. And listen, young people who experience gender identity disorder deserve to be loved, they deserve compassion, and they deserve the proper treatment. They don't deserve to be pushed into some of these things when they're not able to provide informed consent. And so the conditions that we're trying to do and we're trying to elevate are the conditions that make for safety and for protection. There are so many young people that I introduced to you last year that have serious regret after transition. They have health issues and so on and so forth that just goes along with it. And they come back and they say, why did they let someone do this to me? The more we talk about the SAFE Act, the more we share what's actually going on, the more support we gain with this. I don't know if you realize this or not, but according to BillTrack50.com, this was the 5th most researched bill in the United States last year. People are calling me from other states saying, what can we do? What are you doing? How do we do it? But contrary to also to some of the messaging that goes out, this is not an idea or a concept that is pushed by the conservative right wing or even by right wing Christians. The impetus for this bill and other bills like it come from the LGBTQ community. They come from people who have been down this path. They've been hurt. They've been damaged. They've been manipulated. They've had their bodies destroyed. It wreaks havoc on them, and they're the ones who are screaming and saying, someone help us. Someone help us get through this. And contrary to the reports that some have made, when people say, oh, you've never talked to a transgender person, I have talked to transgender people. I have talked to detransitioned people, and I have talked to DeSisters. DeSisters is a group that kind of lives in the shadows. They don't even come out and talk about it. No one really knows that they exist. But the reality is that between 85 and 95% of the children who have gender identity disorder will dissipate over time through puberty. They don't have that problem anymore. They become at one with their authentic selves, with their biological bodies, and they continue to move on. But one of the persons that I talked to, who is a DeSister, actually told me, they said, listen, here's a problem I have, or a problem I had as a young person, is I was afraid to go to my church community and others in that community, because I was afraid that I was going to be labeled. I was afraid I was going to not be loved. I was afraid I was going to be branded. And shame on the Christian community for that, because that should not happen. It doesn't matter who you are, how you identify, where you come from, you deserve to be loved. And shame on us if we don't get that message right. And they said, that's why I was afraid to go to that community, but I was also afraid to go to the professionals because I was afraid that they would affirm me, and I knew that wasn't right for me. My mind was wrestling against my body. My emotions were struggling against reality. And I just needed someone who would help me to believe in myself, who I am, and as I am. But I felt like it was going to be two extremes, this way or that way. And really what we need to do is we need to love all of these children who experience gender identity disorder, sometimes called gender dysphoria, and we need to just help them to feel valued and loved and cherished just as they are. And so as we continue this year, we have improved and increased the number of co-sponsors that we have in the House. With me, we have 40 people on this bill who are ready to protect and to defend young people who are experiencing gender identity disorder and keep them from being abused by the medical professionals, so-called, who are in this. So here's some of the highlights. Well, first of all, you ought to know that, as I said, this is being pushed by people in the community. There are people out there like Scott Nugent, I think, is in Texas, And he's a huge advocate. Scott is a trans man who speaks up and screams up about this bill and what's going on and how this transition idea and concept is deceiving a lot of people. And it sounds all good and well until it happens, and then there's a lot of suffering on the other end of that. But not only is there Scott, there are people like Jamie Reed, just came out in the Free Press. Jamie Reed identifies as queer, and I believe is married to a trans man, and has worked in this industry in Missouri. And Jamie is a whistleblower who just came out and said how all of this is about profit. These children are not receiving the proper care that they deserve. They're being pushed through this and instantly affirmed. What you may or not realize is that kids, even here in Ohio, are being given letters to go have their breasts removed at the age of 16, sometimes on one visit to a clinic, maybe as many as 3 times. And they get these letters and they get this approval, and they go, and these young ladies at the age, listen to me, at the age of 16 are having double mastectomies. And then just like Chloe Cole, who came and testified, and I don't think anyone here ever interviewed her. No one asked her any questions. No one gave her any attention. She's become nationally known since then, but she started testifying in our house, and she got ignored. Now, y'all will interview people like Amy Schneider, who won $1 million on Jeopardy, but I don't think winning $1 million on Jeopardy qualifies you to speak to this issue. And so these people deserve your attention. So let me also mention there was a film that just came out. It was produced by a Hollywood producer, a Hollywood filmmaker, who was raising a trans child and went through the process and then realized that it was all misinformation. And the problems that she went through with her son, and it was all about affirmation, affirmation, affirmation. They call it gender affirmation. What it is they're affirming the dysphoria. And so produced this film called Affirmation Generation. And I watched that film. It's very, very informative. Went to watch it today, and they've got some issues with it, and I don't know what those issues are, but you have a QR code there that takes you to their website where you can find out that information. I believe there's a QR code in there also for the article from Jamie Reed. So let me tell you some of the things that are in this version of the SAFE Act. As you know, we had 2 versions last time. And so, first of all, it preserves the bodily integrity of the individual. In other words, you cannot have surgery until you're an adult. When you're an adult, listen, that's an adult choice. We know from science that the prefrontal cortex does not fully develop until the age of 24. We know that even the people who oppose this bill acknowledge the fact that teenagers are prone to risk. They are not risk averse. They take chances that they would not take, that adults would not take. And so we say no surgeries if you're a minor, no surgeries until you're 18 years old. Young people are not capable of providing informed consent for this. It protects children from dangerous drugs, from the cross-sex hormones, and from the puberty blockers. Now listen, the puberty blockers is the gateway. And they say it's just a pause button. It is not a pause button. Puberty is supposed to start at a certain time. The reason that they are so eager to put these kids on puberty blockers is because puberty blockers stops your mental development. It fixes that child in that place and in that time for a long time. They tell us, science tells us, that 85 to 95% of children with gender dysphoria will desist when they go through puberty. Puberty is the natural resolution for this. But if you put them on puberty blockers, their minds do not develop, their bodies do not develop, and they are trapped in that state of dysphoria. They don't come out of it, and then they persist on to opposite sex, wrong sex, cross-sex hormones, however you want to phrase it. 98% of the children who take puberty blockers will take opposite sex hormones, whereas 85 to 95% who don't take them will desist. So they are migrating, they are herding these children into that process, and then after that, once they're adults, they are naturally prone to pursue the surgeries that take place. And I was talking to someone in the community, and they said, I said, tell me if this is accurate description. And here's the description. The first thing that happens when a person starts identifying as trans, when they start being recognized by their pronouns, their preferred pronouns, that is a euphoric experience. And when they start dressing as the opposite sex, there's a little more euphoria that comes with that. And then once they start on the hormone blockers, that's a boost. But then soon that's not enough. And then they want to have the opposite sex hormones, and that's a boost. But pretty soon that's not enough. Then they need this surgery. And by the way, there are multiple surgeries that go along with this, not just one surgery. And that surgery gives them a sense of euphoria. And then that wears off. And then that one, and so on and so forth, until at the end, there's nothing else they can do to affirm themselves anymore. And they realize that didn't work. That was empty and that was hollow. And that's when suicide becomes a very dangerous risk. We know that approximately the people who transition are approximately 20 times more likely to take their own lives. So this bill will save lives. And that's why we're doing this. When you put them on these hormone blockers and these cross-sex hormones, they're putting their bodies at war against their own endocrine system. It never makes sense. You're always at war with your body. The other thing it does is it protects the rights of families. What is very sad to me and breaks my heart is that sometimes the school counselors, sometimes the doctors, sometimes the gender counselors, they refuse to tell the parents what their children are going through. And in fact, Dr. Leanne Connard from Children's Hospital in Cincinnati was teaching a seminar, a webinar for pediatricians. And basically she said, number one, she wants to screen children for gender dysphoria from the moment that they can speak, wants to do it every year. And then if a child identifies as having some issues or some conflicts with their gender, she says, you don't have to tell the parents. You can refer them to counseling without telling their parents it's for gender dysphoria. You just tell the moms and dads that it's for anxiety and depression. And they are writing moms and dads out of the picture. That is wrong. And we're protecting the rights of the parents to direct the decisions and the upbringing of their children in those ways. Number one, let me see where I'm at here. We demand ethical standards for mental health. Some of these kids can go and get diagnosed in a single visit, one visit, and it's called affirmation, gender affirmation. And so, oh yeah, you think you're a girl? So, okay, you're a girl. You think you're a boy? Okay, you're a boy. One visit, sometimes as many as 3 visits, and they get affirmed. And we have proof of this right here in Ohio. They get affirmed, and once they get affirmed, then they move on. But what they don't take into consideration is that many of these kids, if not all of these kids, have several comorbidities, sometimes up to 4 different comorbidities: anxiety, depression, ADHD. Some of these kids are victims of sexual abuse, violence, and other types of abuse, where this becomes their escape. But they ignore all of that and go straight to the gender dysphoria. So what this bill says now is before you can diagnose a child with gender dysphoria, you must screen them both for comorbidities and for abuse before making that diagnosis. And so we're protecting the children in that sense. And then we're also we're demanding that the hospitals and the clinics who counsel and who diagnose children with gender dysphoria, we're asking and demanding that they report anonymized data. So anonymized, let me just repeat that. It means anonymous. It's detached from the individual. People should not be reporting, as some have, that we are creating a transgender registry. That's just ignorant, and that's foolish to report something like that. And you should be more responsible than to do that. When we were having our debates and our discussions last year, we were looking for information. People want information, whether you're on the right or whether you're on the left, whether you're independent. You want information as we make these decisions. And we have some great information from independent researchers like Lisa Littman, who's done a fantastic job. You should research her writings and her work. But we don't have anything directly from the hospitals. They said, tell us what you want to know. So we asked the Hospital Association, here's our questions. We gave them a nice long list of questions. They never answered our questions. They showed up in committee and gave some minor answers, but they really didn't share the answers to the questions that we were asking. So we're saying, okay, let's report some things. How many children have been diagnosed? Were they male? Were they female? How old were they? Did they persist or did they desist? We want some basic information so that we can better study this and so that we can better understand this. That's how science works. We want to make sure that we are doing the best, that we are doing the right thing for all of these children. And as you know, many times that motive is simply profit. Vanderbilt University was exposed over the course of this last year for what they had done and how they were pushing the profit motive. Dr. Rachel Levine recently talked about profit and getting the ROI on these gender transition things. That was discovered in some of his emails. And so the motives of sometimes people do have pure motives. Sometimes the motives are not so pure. And we want to make sure that we take all of that into consideration. The Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, segm.org, has given a report, and I failed to bring that up here with me. I think it's on your queue. But all across the world, the nations who were first in this, like England, Switzerland, and all these other places, France, they're all backing off because they've seen the detrimental results of what's taken place. You have that in your notes. We are failing our children with this experimental gender medicine. That's why it's called the SAFE Act, Saving Adolescents from Experimentation. And I think that's what I have for the moment. I'm going to invite Ron Lee to come up. Ron Lee is a parent of a child that identifies as trans, and she's going to share her testimony with you.